Hello, hi everyone, and thank you so much. Thank you for coming back to the part 4 of 8 PSA Afghanistan Female Global Leadership Summit 2022. Tariq Mohammadi is at your service, and today I'm going to present 4 more speakers. 4 more female speakers. We had 4 female speakers and 4 and 4, and this is the 4th 4 female speakers. What women leaders considers to know and what they should consider to upgrade and develop. Our first speaker is going to talk about it. She is Vice President of Global Speakers Federation. She is President of Professional Speaker Association of South Africa. She is Charlotte Kemp. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte Kemp.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Kemp, and I am very happy to share this time with you. I thank you very much for the invitation to address the women members of the Professional Speakers Association of Afghanistan. My name is Charlotte Kemp, and I am the immediate past president of the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa. So on behalf of my speaking colleagues here in Southern Africa, we send you greetings there in Afghanistan. I'm going to be talking a little bit about leadership styles today. But let me first give you a proper introduction of myself so you know why it is that I'm sharing with you today. I am a professional speaker, an author, and a futurist. And the work that I normally do with clients is to help them to see how they can reinvigorate their teams, to focus on the future, to find new ways to resolve problems and issues, and to keep pace with all of the challenges and changes that are happening in society and in technology and in other places. I'm also an association executive. I do a great deal of work with various associations, most particularly, as I just said, the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, but I'm also the Vice President of the Global Speakers Federation and various associations around the world. I think we have 16 members at the moment. The speaker associations are members of the Global Speakers Federation, and that allows us to connect with each other around the world and to share ideas and resources and to do exactly what we're doing here with you, having various speakers from around the world to share their insights with the members of PSA Afghanistan. We know that your association is not yet a member of the Global Speakers Federation, but that doesn't mean that you and your members cannot still participate in many of the things that we're doing and to be able to share some of those resources. So before I say anything else, let me extend my invitation to you at any stage. If you want to talk about your speaking, your career, your opportunities, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be delighted to hear from you. But what we're going to talk about today is leadership styles. And there's a whole lot of different leadership styles that we could consider. And this slide is just a kind of a brain dump of a whole lot of those. Leadership has changed over the years. So we have some, in the past, some very directive leadership styles where people would say, this is what has to happen. This is what we're going to do. Modern leadership looks much more at a democratic or a visionary leadership style. But there are different styles for different situations. For example, if you had a team of people and your purpose was to help them to evolve and to grow and to mature into stronger women leaders themselves, then you would want to have that visionary style. You'd want to paint a picture for them and encourage them in a particular direction. However, if you were on an airplane and the airplane was having troubles and the air steward comes down the aisle to give you instructions, you would not want at that stage to have a democratic leadership style. You would want somebody very authoritarian and very directive, saying you must do this, you will do this next, otherwise everybody on the plane is in danger. So there are different leadership styles for different situations. The most important part, and I'll pause here for a moment and just explain this, is that we need to be conscious. We want to be aware of our leadership, of what we're trying to do, of what we're trying to achieve. very often, especially in volunteer associations, people fall into a leadership responsibility without really thinking about it or anticipating it. In certain organizations, people fall into leadership roles. Within families, there are leadership roles. And very often the person doing that is doing the best that they can, given what they know at the time. But they're not necessarily conscious of what they're doing or what they're trying to achieve. So rather than spending time looking at all of the different leadership styles and how things might have changed over the years or how they might be different in different parts of the world, I'd like to have some conversation about what we need to think about our own leadership so that we can be better leaders. And the very first part, the very first step in being a better leader is to be conscious of the fact that you are leading and that you have a style and that you might want to spend some time unpacking that and getting to know what kind of a leader you are. So there are various things that we could consider, but the very first thing might be to spend some time just imagining what you would like to see from your leadership. If you want people to look back on your leadership and make some comments about it, what kind of a leader would you like to be known as? I'll give you an example. When I started with the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, and I've been a member for about 12 years, I had some great ideas and plans about what the association should do. I looked at the leadership at the time and I kind of evaluated them as failing in their mission to do certain things. And I determined that one day when I was a leader, I would make things happen. But over the 12 years, I have grown and matured. I've been more conscious of how I treat other people and how I work with them, and also more conscious, more aware of, more intentional about what the association should be doing. So that by the time I became a leader, the president of the association, rather than being directive, rather than being task-oriented, I actually spent most of my year taking care of our EXCO team. So instead of doing all the work that needed to be done in the association, instead of making all the noise and bringing attention to us, I really took care of and nurtured the leaders who were taking care of the work, because I saw that as my role. The more that I could encourage and empower them, help them to do the things that needed to be done, the better leaders they would become, the more work would be done, and the less pressure and anxiety would be placed on my shoulders. So I know people are looking back on my year and evaluating it, and there may well be some people who think that I have not done what they would have done had they been a leader. But I have certainly achieved what I wanted to in building up people who can take this forward so that we can pass on the leadership mantle to somebody else and they can be stronger and go forward. So let's look at a few more things that we would like to look at as we're trying to evaluate this and determine how conscious we are of our leadership. There are 5 things that change as we look forward to the future of leadership. These things are becoming more and more apparent. They get more headlines, and they certainly take up more of our attention. So let's start with scope. The scope of leadership is a lot more, broader these days. Instead of just having to do certain work in a certain department or a certain place, or have a limited view of the work that you're doing, the scope of our leadership responsibility is bigger and broader. There are more technologies to consider. There are more stakeholders to consider. There are more elements and moving parts, and we are so much more aware these days of the impact of our leadership. And so that scope is really broad. And if you want to develop your leadership to be something that is really significant and impactful, then I invite you to consider the scope. How wide is your leadership responsibility? How many months or years or generations might your leadership have an impact on? And really think about that investment in the scope, rather than having a very narrow view of trying to achieve a task. Really embrace the broader scope of leadership. Like I said, one of those is stakeholders. In the past, organizational leaders would consider just that vertical line of responsibility. They had people in their team, and their team had to do certain things so that other teams could do their work, so that the company could make more money. And that was the whole purpose of leadership. But these days we have stakeholders in so many different places. So for example, a company trying to make a product and make a profit also have to consider their stakeholders. It's not just the staff that they employ, but their families as well. If they have to make financial decisions like retrenching people, that has an impact on other lives, on other livelihoods. And so that stakeholder base becomes broader and broader. When they're selling products to clients, they're not just selling the product to make a profit. They have to make sure that the product that they're selling is a good product, that it's worthwhile, that it adds value to somebody's life and isn't just exchanged for money. And also the kind of people around the company. It could be like a physical stakeholders. So if a company is producing something, producing a product, but also producing a lot of waste and pollution, then the people around, the towns around that factory, for example, the environment around that factory is all going to be affected by their business. So leaders have to take care of stakeholder requirements, even if those stakeholders aren't directly involved in the work that they're doing. So again, if you want to see the future of your leadership and you want to have a broader impact, then sketch out for yourself, who are you dealing with directly when you are in your position of leadership, and what other people might there be around that engagement that could actually have a stake in the work that you are doing. The next thing we look at is pace, and certainly in the future of leadership, the pace is just getting faster and faster. We don't have to keep up with the pace. We don't have to run as fast as everyone else. We don't have to try and do things quickly. It's not about doing things faster and faster. It's about recognizing that the pace is increasing in the world generally. And then we have to find a way to engage with that pace so that we can keep our sanity, but we can also still keep up with technological advances and changes. The other thing that we look at with leadership is very much the purpose. And this is important for us to explore. Is our purpose in our leadership role to achieve a goal, to do something? Or is our purpose more about investing in people, lifting up people, dealing with challenges, dealing with the wounds that people have, finding ways for people to engage with meaningful work for themselves? So what is our purpose? And if we can define very clearly what our leadership purpose is, it means that we can stay closer to it. We can be more meaningful in the work that we do. It does mean that some people will judge us maybe for not doing what they think our purpose is. But if we don't know what our purpose is, then we're going to be responding to so many different calls and so many different requirements. And we're going to be torn. We need to really be focused on this. And then ethics is a very important consideration in the future of leadership. We've already talked about stakeholders and scope. There's a lot more responsibility on the shoulders of a leader these days to do good, impactful work and not just lead to achieve a goal, and it doesn't matter who we leave on the sidelines. So we need to really have a good ethic about what our leadership style is about. And that can be challenging. So when we look at that leadership, all those different responsibilities, we need to come back to ourselves and really invest in our understanding of what our leadership is. And there are 4 things here that I'd like you to consider. The first is to examine ourselves. Ask these questions that I've just gone through. What is our purpose? Who are our stakeholders? What is our scope? How do we want to come across? What are we trying to achieve? What do you want out of leadership? Is it something that you want for your own ego, for your own satisfaction? Or do you want to lead to invest in other people? We can invest in other people and still get benefit for ourselves. There's no reason why we should not benefit from our leadership. But we do not want to sacrifice ourselves for other people, and we do not want to sacrifice other people for ourselves, for our own benefit. So we want to examine how it is that we meet those requirements. And that takes a little bit of time. You might find asking yourself some questions and feeling a bit uncomfortable about the answers. but then you know that that is something you need to explore deeper. The other is worldview. And I recognize that I'm talking to the women speakers in Afghanistan. From outside of Afghanistan, from our part of the world, we hear lots of news headlines. There's lots of stories. There's lots of concerns about how it is that you get to express your lives, your leadership, your ideas, your value to the world. And I don't have any answers for that. I don't have a way to respond to that myself. But we do need to recognize that there are different worldviews around the world. And what you need to do in your leadership style is to understand your worldview and the worldview that you're operating in and the worldview that the people that you're working with, that they are operating in. Just to remove it from your immediate circumstances and look elsewhere in the world. There are huge political divisions around the world in terms of how people see politics, of how people see religion, of how people see women. I know these are all issues that affect you, but they are in other parts of the world equally, and they are very polarized. So that when we start to talk to someone these days, there's a kind of a conversation that happens where we're first just trying to find out where do they stand on these issues before we can find some common ground to discuss. Otherwise, we could easily say something that would deeply offend someone with a different worldview. So we need to be aware of that. How we deal with that, how we have those conversations, it is the second challenge. But the first one is to understand the worldview of the people that we're dealing with and to have a bit of a respect for how they got to that worldview. It's not necessarily our job to challenge all the worldviews that we disagree with, but we do need to start with understanding what they are. Which brings us back to purpose. And I know I keep saying this. In fact, I've got a little note on my screen as well about purpose, because it really is vitally important that we understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. We can do all the work in the world. If we don't have our purpose right, then we're just working for the sake of it. We're just leading to have a role. But if we have a purpose in mind, if we're trying to achieve something that is important to us, then the work that we invest in is going to be so much more meaningful. So really identify your purpose, and that can change over time. Even your worldview could change over time. And that is why we want to keep examining ourselves and coming back to this. I know this is very philosophical, but I think a good dose of philosophy every now and then is really important for us to understand why it is that we do what we do. And then the last picture I have here on this slide is about satisfy. Who do you satisfy? So I'm going to pause sharing. When we look at who we satisfy, there are all those stakeholders. There are all the people who are in our team, in our family, in the organizations that we're exercising our leadership within. And they're all going to have different ways of judging the work that you do. They're going to have different ways of evaluating your value. And very often, and I don't know if this is the same for women in your part of the world, but certainly here in South Africa, we see this where people are trying to respond to the expectations of their parents, to the expectations of society, to the expectation of religious leaders. And all of those responses can be quite exhausting. So I'm going to give you permission to consider this. There are only two people in the entire world that you need to satisfy. And it's not your family, and it's not the men in your life, and it's not the children in your life, and it's not the people you work with. There are only two people you need to satisfy. You need to satisfy your 8-year-old self, and you need to satisfy your 80-year-old self. So think about yourself as an 8-year-old child, when you're just starting to kind of wake up to this world and see what is going on and have some ambitions and dreams about the future. Think back to that 8-year-old child. What did she want to achieve? What did she want to do? What did she hope that she could actually operate in later on in her life? And think about, is the work that you're doing right now honoring and satisfying your 8-year-old self? And then think about your 80-year-old self. Imagine yourself so much older towards the end of your life, with perhaps children and grandchildren, certainly lots of family around you, people that you have touched throughout your lives. And think about yourself at 80 years old. your clients, your contacts, your colleagues, anybody. Have you done what you are honoring to honor them? Have you given real value to those people? You don't need to ask them. They don't need to come and tell you. They don't need to come and give you accolades or give you testimonials. But think in your heart, when you're 80 years old, will you be able to say that the work that you have done now has been for the good of those people, has added some real value, has had some real purpose? If your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self is happy with the work that you've done as a leader, then you have done a good job, and no one else needs to tell you differently. So, ladies, colleagues, that is what I want to share with you today. I invite you again to connect with me at any stage if you'd like to talk about this message, if you'd like to talk about your speaking career, if you'd like to share any other ideas you have. My name is Charlotte Kemp. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, charlottekemp.co.za, and you can email me at charlotte@charlottekemp.co.za. I welcome any connection with you and to hear your stories and to hear your leadership stories as well. And I wish you well. Thank you for allowing me this time to share with you today.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was so nice. That was so good. The next speaker is from India. The next speaker is going to talk about setbacks. Setbacks that we have in our life, setbacks that are boundaries, the setbacks that are taking our energy, setbacks that they are pushing us to nowhere. How you can convert those setbacks is a kind of a skill, it's a kind of expertise that a person which is expert should talk about it, that everyone get to know what to do or what to do better. So the next speaker is dear Bhatnagar. She is having Islamic hijab too, and will give you the best flowers of her life. As I told you that each speaker is giving a flower in one basket. So each week we are going to present 4 speakers. This is part 4 out of 8, and our next speaker is dear Bhatnagar. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see and watch and learn.
Salam. I'm from India, and hand in heart, honestly, I can't even imagine the kind of challenges, kind of setbacks that you all went through or are going through currently due to the current situation in your country. Well, when Tariq and Sabera reached out to me to speak at this conference, I went totally blank. I didn't know what should I really tell you that you already don't know. I was in loss of words. Imagine a speaker who speaks is not able to find her words. That is how I felt listening to, reading your stories, the stories of suppression, hopelessness, and other things. But it was Sabera and Tariq who made me realize that that is the reason I must speak. And that's why I'm here today, talking to you all, sharing everything that I know with the little hope that you find a ray of light among the darkness that you are dealing with right now. So let's get started. I'm going to talk to you about a practice that in India we had to go through many years back. Afghanistan is not the only country where women are treated as second-class citizens. Even India has had her fair shares of atrocities towards women. One such thing was something called this practice that is called sati pratha or sati practice. What happens in sati practice is that, or what used to happen is that a married woman was brainwashed to sacrifice herself along with her deceased husband by sitting on the funeral pyre and burning herself alive. If you're already cringing with this thought, imagine those women who went through this pain. Now, this used to be a big problem in western states of India called Rajputana, and the eastern states where I belong from, it's called the Bengal. In fact, in the late 19th century, this practice became a menace. In the early 19th century, in fact, it became a menace in the country. Around the same time, Mughals were ruling the country, and they were the first one to take note of this demonous process, the menace, and that's when they started banning this particular process. Then the British came forward, and they couldn't care less much. It was so bad in 1803 that in the city where I come from, called Calcutta alone, we recorded 438 cases of sati. Imagine this is what was going on at that point in time. This same number increased to double between 1815 and 1818. Even though there was already a ban in process. That's when reformers like William Carey and Ram Mohan Roy sat together and started taking the baton and running behind it and saying that we need to abolish this menace, this particular demonous practice against women. They rallied behind it, and to 1829 they abolished this particular practice. But even then it was abolished until the 1980s in fact. India still recorded isolated incidents of sati practice. It took us 150 years of struggle to finally abolish it. Imagine this. My great-great-grandmother was a victim of this particular practice. Today we live in a much, much better country, thanks to the sacrifices, the fights of our ancestors. But this was not the case for them. Why am I telling you this story? Why am I telling you this story in such a detail? That's because I simply want you to take a leaf out of our history and make sure that the history doesn't repeat for your country. So here I am talking to you all, blending in and asking you, how can you contribute to reforming your country? How can you turn your setbacks into opportunities of growth for yourself and for your future generation? We will talk about it right now. Let's get started. Generally, we go through two different types of setbacks where there is regressive or difficult situations are there in the country. The first ones are external setbacks. Can you name a few external setbacks that you think is actually harming you and your growth? Here they are. Socio-economic situation, then geopolitical condition, then just a second, financial health of the country, substandard safety measures, regressive leadership, overall uncertain environment. Now, if you go back to the 19th century of India, India was going through a turbulent time at that time. Everyone wanted to accumulate wealth because they were not finding safety in the government and every other way. So the thought process was, if they could eliminate the so-called upper class women, weaker gender, then it becomes easier to grab those wealth. Secondly, women's virtues were the most important thing at those times. And it was decided by the men what would be a woman's virtue. And it was traded like a commodity. Thirdly, it put men in more power to see that they are able to handle everything. Now come back to the country, your country. What's happening here right now? You're going through financial difficulties. You're having difficult, regime, and you're also having a lot of difficult situations for women out here in your country. But honestly, like how in India, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, William Carey took the entire baton in their hand and started marching towards it. Likewise, why can't some of you become that reformer for your country? At the same time, if you can't be a reformer, why can't you be a supporter to that reformer? We wouldn't have abolished sati pratha or sati practice if women of that time didn't get more empowered, didn't realize the problems that they faced, the atrocities that were going against them, and how it was harming them more than helping them. So, if you're wondering how can you really take care of your physical, your emotional, your spiritual health at this point in time, with so many difficult situations going on in your country, I want you to stop right there. Yes, I want you to stop right there. Because it's a tendency of human race to think about challenges and setbacks and forget that there are opportunities hidden behind that. Yes, I know it is difficult, but still I would want you to stop your focus on the setbacks and see if you can find an opportunity behind this. Now, how do we do that? How do we really focus on the opportunity instead of the setback? Here are some of the techniques. Let's say currently you're facing all the problems, all the external problems that we just spoke about. Socio-cultural problems, the financial difficulties of the country, regressive leadership, so much rules, there is so much constraint, and so on and so forth. I want you to just sit in one place and let's do this technique together. Shall we? What I want you to do is sit quietly, put a hand on your heart, close your eyes, and think, am I the person because of whom these external challenges are coming my way? Have I contributed to any of these myself? Should I be blamed for these challenges that I'm facing right now, or we are facing as a country collectively? You can open your eyes right now and give me an answer. Is it a yes or a no? I know for a fact many of you have answered it's a strong no. And yes, you are not responsible for these external challenges that are happening in your country. You are the victim of it. But people who are victim can be survivor too. Therefore, what I want you to do is, these problems, what you cannot concentrate on or solve, more so, park them aside. This is what my counselor told me when I was going through a lot of challenges in my life. She said, focus on the challenges that you can solve and leave the rest aside. The challenges that we can focus on primarily are the internal challenges. Now, what are these internal challenges or the setbacks? Let's see. Oh, fear or lack of focus, lack of courage, hopelessness. Yeah, I know many of you are hopeless right now. Lack of energy. Yeah. Lack of purpose. And probably lack of focus in doing the right things for the right purpose. Let's see how we can solve these internal challenges. These are within our hands. And the good news is that it's very easy if you practice it on a daily basis. So I'm going to share two of my favorite techniques which you can use to turn your setbacks into opportunities for growth. And the technique number one is journaling. So I run a podcast called Setback Leadership, and over there I interview leaders from all across the world from different walks of life. So in one such episode, there was my guest, Miss Sangeeta Roy Chaudhary from India. And I asked her this question, Sangeeta, how do you deal with your internal challenges, your internal setbacks? And she mentioned journaling. She talked about 2 journals that she maintains. I want to ask you, do you know what is journaling? Do you maintain journals? If you know, great. If you are maintaining journals, even better. But if you are still not aware of what is journaling or how to maintain journal, nothing to worry. I have created a framework to do journaling in the right way that gives you results as part of my second book, Soar, and it is available in the internet for download. I'm going to share the links with the team there who are actually organizing this summit, and you can ask them for those links and download and start journaling. What caught my attention is that she talked about 2 different journals, and the first one was pretty normal. A lot of us do that. It is the journal where you write down your achievements, your accolades, and your blessings for the day, counting your blessings for the day. But the most interesting part of her second journal, what she called a lie journal, was that she used this at the end of the day just before hitting the bed. And what she said was very interesting. She said, the lies that I tell myself, the lies that I have been telling myself throughout the day. For example, I'm not strong enough to fight for my own right. I am Maryam-less. How can I protect my family? I can't do this. I can't achieve that. I can't learn this, and so on and so forth. She would write those lies down in her book, in her journal, and then strike it out. Something like this. Can you see at my backside how she has striked it off? So I really suggest you that you create a lie journal and write down the lies that you are telling yourself right now and strike those off. The second technique is the technique of reframing. This is my favorite technique. I love this and I use it on a daily basis. Whenever I'm hit with a setback, instead of cribbing, why me? God, why me? I say, wow, it's me. And the moment I say that, my entire focus shifts from the setback to the opportunity that's there in my way. Try this. You might find interesting results from this. Now, the same thing, same reframing I have used to also realize that what my ancestors went through because of the difficult situation that they had been put through, I am living a much better and much good life, safe life in my country right now. And I can appreciate life in much, much better way. Now think about it. In the 1990s, women of Afghanistan were not even allowed to be seen, leave alone studying or working. Today, you all have got that freedom. Even though there is resistance, even though the safety is a problem, you're still able to learn. You are able to be empowered today. You have the power of knowledge. The women of 1990s in Afghanistan didn't have the power of knowledge. Today you do. And that is your opportunity. How can you use that knowledge to create a great future for yourself and for your generation? Now we've been talking to women so far, but what about the men? Are they not required for this reform? I strongly believe men are required for this reform. And why are men so important stakeholders? Let me tell you that why. Imagine a vehicle, whatever vehicle that you choose. Can it run on one wheel? Probably your answer is no. And that's exactly why if a society has to function, flourish, and grow and nurture at the optimum level, it must have both genders playing equal roles. Or else the growth, the progress, the transformation collectively for the country is not going to be of any use. Also, what if I tell you, as men, it is also in your favor to support this movement, support this reform, and find the opportunities for your women so that you can get opportunities of better success. If you want to be more successful, you must have empowered, evolved, and educated women in your family. I know Tariq, his mother was a teacher, and probably that's why he is currently flourishing despite of the challenges the country is facing. Similarly, you might have many examples of men or women who have flourished where the family was educated, evolved, and empowered. So if you truly want to be successful, you need to have women family members who are educated, evolved, and empowered. Second reason, children. My heart goes out to those children who are seeing so much difficulties in their life at such early age and going into the darkness. If you have women in your family who are educated, evolved, and empowered, they will bring out your children out of that darkness and push them towards light. While you fetch for your family through earning, she will build your children for the future. The third reason is to improve family finances and well-being. When a woman of the family is empowered, educated, and evolved, they learn unique ways to better the family finance and well-being. How? Well, when women learn to earn in spite of staying indoors, would your family finance get better? Would your well-being of the family get better? Answer yourself. Find any reason, these are not the only reasons, find any reason that talks to you so that you can help your women grow forward, so that as a nation, you all can grow together out of this setback. Now, I know there are many of you listening to this conversation, this speech, this particular conference and the summit, who have the mindset, the means, and the intention to do something for the less privileged one who are yet to be able to come out of their hopelessness. How can you help others who are still struggling in your country? Here are some of the ways. Well, again, this is not a complete laundry list of the solutions, but I'm trying to give a few which you can try for your country. The first one is you can become their voice. How? As speakers, as educators, as intellectuals, how about you talk about the problems, you talk about your grit, your resilience, your story of growth, your story of struggles, everything, and share it with other women. When you do that, other women learn from you. They get inspired to take action. They feel motivated enough to come out of their darknesses. The second thing that you can do is find unique solutions to the problems. I hear the schools, especially the girls' schools, are closed in Kabul and many parts of Afghanistan. Well, what if girls don't need to go to school? The school can come to the girls. How would that be? If you're wondering how, well, if we can have online speeches, online conferences, why can't we run online schools? How about running an online school where women, kids, girls can learn from the safety of their homes? If you find a solution here, and if you can offer this to your group, your tribe, why don't you just find your tribe and start teaching them online? The third challenge that I'm seeing is happening in Afghanistan a lot is about food. Food is not being available, and there's a scarcity of food. How about we empower women to grow their own food in their backyard? Is it possible? I don't know. I don't know your geographical situation in the country, but this is a random idea that came in my mind, and I thought I'll share it with you. What if people could grow their own food in their backyard? When India was going through challenges in the 19th century, many of the Indians were growing their own food, grains, etc. And that's how they managed to survive. I'm sure there are many solutions, many ways you can help people. And that's what I would want you to do. Either become a reformer for your country and help other people come out of their darkness, or support, be part of such reform and make sure that you grow out of it. Lastly, I would just say, focus on what's in your control and leave the rest aside. I know together you all will come out of this challenge, this setback, and grow phenomenally. Amen. If you want to stay in touch with me, find me in LinkedIn as Srijata Bhatnagar, and I would love to stay connected with you and converse more on this. For now, Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much, dear Bhatnagar. That was so nice. And the next speaker is from Argentina. We are so proud that Afghanistan is inviting a speaker from all over the sea, from Argentina, to share their wisdom, their inspiration with Afghanistan female leader, or with Afghanistan student, girl students. So her topic is dream hard, dream big. She will encourage you to dream, how to dream, and how to get that dream. Ladies and gentlemen, let's learn and watch and hear and get some more motivation from Melina Jajamovich from Argentina.
Hi, girls and women from Afghanistan. I'm delighted to be here with you. So let's start working. Let me ask you, how often do you dream with your eyes open? Which is your biggest dream in your life? Would you draw it right now? Would you write it for me? Please put stop on this video and do it now. I will be here waiting for you when you come back. So, it was easy or not to dream? I have no doubt my biggest strength is I know how to dream and I know how to make my dreams come true. But let me tell you, this is not something I learned in books or at college. This is something that my family gave to me and I will love to share with you. My grandfather, Martin, he didn't have an easy life. He spent his whole life painting and making sculptures, although it was not how he earned his living. But doing what he loved the most made him happy. I'd never ever seen someone's eyes spark so much. And the message I love to share with you is connect with your passions and don't ever let them go. Never give up on our dreams. Never. My grandmother was called Dora. Her family ran away from Poland when she was a baby, and she always had a question for me, what are you learning? She knew that to live is to learn, and she kept her whole life learning new things. And this was a big message for me, never ever stop learning. Keep your curiosity alive and try harder each day. My mom was called Renata, my dad was called Manolo. They gave me a big present before they left. They always told me to have faith in myself. They say, just discover what you like, and if you really want it, you can do it. Trust, faith, confidence. I wish I could give these 3 gifts to my kids. And this is the third big message. Don't put limits on your dreams. Find the people who believe in you and don't let them go. These messages made me a heavy dreamer. I can dream. I know I deserve a good life, and I know I can make it true. And I believe, I know I can help others to do the same. So it's time to work out. I will give you some exercise. Just listen and stop to take some time to make it. Okay? At first, what's your dream? Again, yes, again, draw it again. And whenever you've done, just ask yourself if you can make it bigger. Women need to believe in themselves and dream bigger. Just put some and try it again. Okay? Take some time to stop and draw your dream. When you're done, I have to give you a new exercise. What's the mantra you need to say to yourself? Write it down and look at it. How do you feel when you read it? If it doesn't bring you joy, just let it go and try again with another one. So we have a big dream, we have a big mantra, and now I have I have 2 presents for you. Now I will love that you write which are the most important people for you. Who are the persons that are by your side, which is your network. Please write down the names. Take some time, find out if it's easy or not. If we want to dream bigger, if we want to make dreams come true, we have to know who can help us, who can be by our side to encourage us. And I have this last dream, this last exercise. What's your first step to reach your dream? What's the first thing you're going to do? Because to build our dreams and to make them come true, we have to dream, but we have to do the first baby step. And we have to walk each day. Because there's no way, and there's no other way to build bigger dreams than start walking and remembering that yes, we can do it. I hope you could connect, and I hope you can write me sometime and tell me which are your dreams and that you can make them be true. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Melina. That was appreciated. The next speaker is a scientist. The next speaker is going to talk about travelizing as a scientist. She is Dr. Karren Knowlton. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from Dr. Karren.
Hello. To all those tuning in for the Public Speakers Association of Afghanistan Summit, including the women and girls of Afghanistan. Have you ever wondered what it takes to be a trailblazer? I'd like you to take a minute to think of someone you consider a trailblazer, maybe in politics, sports, or business, and see who comes into mind. You're likely thinking of someone who was the first to accomplish something extraordinary in a way that changed people's expectations for what's possible. We often think of trailblazers as those who defiantly buck the status quo, are exceptionally independent, and forge forward with unwavering confidence in where they're going and what they're doing. If you've ever wanted to set some new precedents or create a new path for others, but this doesn't quite sound like you, or you don't think this approach would work for your situation, I've got good news. My name is Karren Knowlton, and I am an organizational psychologist and postdoctoral fellow at Dartmouth College in the United States. I study catalysts for change in organizations. And a big piece of my research focuses on what makes people want to be trailblazers. In my research, trailblazing means setting new precedents that break barriers or open doors for others. This could be starting new ways of doing things in your local community, or creating new opportunities where you work, or even society more broadly. Today, I'm going to highlight 3 myths about trailblazing, point to the scientific evidence on why these myths are not always true, and give you some examples of incredible female trailblazers along the way. The first myth: trailblazers set out to defy the status quo. In a recent study, Mary Tripsis and Tonya Zuzulol looked at startups that were early entrants into what's called the air taxi market, which launched around the year 2000. They were trying to figure out what made some of these startups more successful than others at navigating this new unknown space. You may be thinking, what's an air taxi? Don't worry, I also had to look it up. In case you're wondering, this is an air taxi. They use new technology to provide commercial flights over short distances at a fraction of the previous cost. What Dr. Tripsis and Dr. Zuzulol found was fascinating. How startup founders thought of their identities significantly impacted their ability to adapt and succeed as air taxi companies. First, there were founders who saw themselves as revolutionaries. They wanted to change the world, but got hung up on being different from the status quo. They cared more about having radically novel business models and innovative technology than strong performance. As the industry was shifting around them, these companies doubled down on whatever seemed the most groundbreaking at the time. But there were other founders who saw themselves as discoverers. These founders saw this new market landscape as one to explore. Instead of changing the world, they simply wanted to build a successful air taxi business. They prioritized trying out different technologies, even if some of them weren't as novel, and sought out new opportunities that might not seem as groundbreaking. As a result, they were better able to find and exploit valuable paths that got them closer to their goal. When it comes to trailblazing, it can help not to fixate on how different you want to be from the status quo, as frustrating as the current situation might be, but instead define your quest by where you want to go. Then keep your head up for opportunities and stay flexible around how you might get there. Few people probably know this better than Katie Carrico, a medical trailblazer who has changed millions of lives through her role in the development of mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccines. mRNA, or messenger RNA, carries DNA instructions between cells in our bodies. Dr. Carrico was convinced from her earliest days as a scientist that mRNA could be used to tell cells to make their own medicines. She knew exactly where she wanted to go. But when she started out, the technology wasn't there, and she struggled for decades. It meant having to move from one research lab to another. But she still stayed open to whatever would allow her to continue her mRNA research. One fateful day, she struck up a conversation at a photocopying machine with one Dr. Wiseman. Dr. Wiseman was looking to make a vaccine against HIV. Dr. Kariko said, "Sure, I can do that," even if she wasn't quite sure how yet. Together, Dr. Kariko and Dr. Wiseman had several breakthroughs, but they still struggled to publish their research findings in scientific journals for years. It wasn't until the COVID-19 virus came along that biotech companies took notice of what they were doing. And now, millions of people around the world have greater protection against this virus and future viruses because Dr. Kariko kept her goal in mind, but also kept herself open to discovering alternative ways of pursuing it. The second myth, trailblazing is a solo endeavor. When we think of trailblazers, we tend to picture people who stand out from everyone else like them because of what they've accomplished. This can create the false impression that if you want to create a new path, you have to be willing to sacrifice community and belonging to do so. But my own research shows just the opposite, that feeling belonging with others who can benefit from your trailblazing efforts is a huge factor in motivating and sustaining energy toward clearing new paths. In my research, I've studied employees working in a wide variety of industries in the United States, from medicine to transportation to marketing, who were in fields of work where people like them had been historically underrepresented. I find that when these people feel like others have low expectations for their performance, this could be due to stereotypes about their gender or race, for example. A key factor, and if they seek to be trailblazers and change their industries or their companies, is if they have a sense of community and belonging with others from their marginalized groups. Without this sense of belonging with others who share our goals and struggles, even those who desperately want to go down a trailblazing path might see the cost as too great or the burden too heavy. Consider the story of Katrina Miller, a Black physicist. Dr. Miller never wanted to be a trailblazer. She just wanted to be a scientist. She was drawn to pursue a PhD in physics because she was fascinated by dark matter, or the invisible glue that physicists believe holds the universe together. No big deal. But Katrina Miller is a Black woman, and there are very few Black women in academics, and even fewer Black women academics in astrophysics. When she started her PhD at the University of Chicago in 2016, Katrina was one of 2 Black women in a graduate student class of over 200. Between feeling used by professors for marketing materials and the racist comments from her classmates, Katrina sometimes felt like an alien. When she was around others on campus, she just wanted to escape. But she really struggled with this idea of abandoning her passion. She was desperate to connect with others, and Katrina found a database of African American women in physics and connected with some of the others on it. She found out that the woman who created it, Jamie Valentine Miller, started the list simply to feel like she had company, even if she didn't interact with the others on the list. For Jamie, this was enough to get her through. But Katrina finished up her PhD this summer and has decided to leave academia to become a writer. And no doubt, she'll be a highly successful writer, but you can't help but wonder what the field of physics is losing by her leaving. These women's stories remind us of how central belonging to a community of similar others is for trailblazing. Whether we're trying to clear the path for others, or we simply want to do something that few like us have done before. The third myth, trailblazers already have a roadmap to where they're going. I believe the saying goes, everything is 2020 in hindsight, right? It can be tempting to think about trailblazing this way, that if you want to set new precedents in your community or at work, you need to already know where you're going and how you're going to get there. You need the entire path at the start. In reality, when we set our sights on something in the distant future, the path often reveals itself with each step we take. And the more that we change direction, we see evidence for this approach in research on super forecasters. These are people who are able to predict the future with unusual accuracy, including outcomes such as who will win a sports tournament to a political election that's over a year away. Researcher Phil Tetlock finds that when it comes to accurate forecasting, the most important factor isn't someone's intelligence, it's how frequently they update their beliefs. Super forecasters are those who treat their expectations like hypotheses to test. They seek out disconfirming evidence, and they update it at a very high rate. In other words, they think like scientists. Trailblazing is also likely to be more effective with this approach, developing hypotheses along the way about which path might work, testing it out, and adjusting course if something changes and your first strategy fails. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson is a marvelous example of this. When she was 23, Elizabeth met a female physician she especially connected with and decided she also wanted to be a physician. The problem was the year was 1859. Elizabeth lived in Great Britain, and in 1859, there were no female physicians in Great Britain. She had both legal and societal hurdles to overcome. Elizabeth's first strategy was to begin working as a surgical nurse at a hospital, where she could shadow physicians while arranging private tutoring and slowly integrate herself into the system without causing too much disturbance. This worked well enough until medical students at her hospital rallied together and signed a petition objecting to her mere presence. So, as a second strategy, she tried applying to several medical schools through the regular channels, but she received nothing but rejections. She pivoted again. She found an alternative licensing arrangement through an organization that could not discriminate based on her sex. But even when she had a valid license to practice medicine, no hospital would hire her. Pivot number 4. Elizabeth started her own practice in London. Several years later, she found out that there was a French medical school that was admitting women. She studied French just so that she could apply, and finally, several years after being admitted, received her medical degree. Elizabeth was the first female physician in Britain. She co-founded the first hospital staffed by women, was the first dean of a British medical school, and went on to have a career that only got more impressive from here. The key to her success wasn't sticking to the path she started on. It was learning from what didn't work and being open to different paths. For anyone tuning into this summit who might want to set new precedents or break barriers for others, I hope this has helped you rethink what it takes to be a trailblazer and given you some new strategies for driving change. You don't need to be a revolutionary to be a trailblazer. You don't need to do it alone, and you don't need to already have a map in front of you. Find a community, stay open to alternate paths, and treat every step like a hypothesis. Trailblaze like a scientist.
That was part 4. In this part, we had speakers from India, from Argentina, from USA. In this part, we had the pleasure of listening about setback, listening about what women leaders need to consider. We listened from Melina about dream hard, dream big, work hard to get it. Thank you so much again for listening. Thank you for booking your time. Also for the part 5. Next week we are going to have part 5. Till next week, see you. Tariq Mohammadi.